Hi, Matt Roberts with D1 Ticker and AthleticDirectorU. I'm joined today by Vermont AD Jeff Schulman and Fairfield AD Paul Schlickmann. We are going after the topic of creating a purpose-driven organization. Big topic, we'll dig in. Paul, you're going through this, I know, right now at Fairfield, so maybe it's a bit of an unfair question for you, but you've been an AD previously. When I ask that question, where do you go with living the values that you've set for your department and examples of you personally doing that?
Yeah, it's, as we talked about right outside, I'm kind of right in the thick of it right now. So on the front end, I actually find it to be somewhat easy right now, if that makes any sense. Coming into Fairfield, it's not always the case where you feel like you're walking into a place where you're completely aligned with and feel like you're a great fit based on their core values, based on the mission of the institution and everything that they're about. And I did feel like that on the front end to some degree. I had a great knowledge of it because my dad's an alum. So I wasn't Jesuit educated, but I felt like I was Jesuit educated my whole life. So all those values that they espouse, I felt like were at my core, and I was weaned on them, and I kind of lived them as an athlete and then as an athletic administrator and tried to carry them with me. That coupled with the fact that I walked into, as an AD, a golden situation with a new president who I felt like I was completely aligned with in terms of where he wanted to take the athletics program, take the institution, take the athletics program, and use athletics as a vehicle to kind of enhance everything that they're about. So I walked into a pretty good situation in that regard. So in some sense, you know, the kind of like the alignment of values, they're inherent with who I am and what I'm about, and then I automatically had this synergy with the leadership at the top. So it's not that hard to kind of walk the walk that you kind of believe in and that's you feel like is being espoused at every turn. So in that sense, that part of it was really good and in place.
Jeff, you've been in Vermont 25 years.
Yeah.
That's a good stint to probably grasp the DNA of an institution. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What are some key values that you guys point to as guiding principles for your department?
Yeah, I think we're not unlike a lot of colleges and universities in that, that our focus is on the student athlete and really helping to ensure that we're creating an environment where they're developing and growing as people first, as students, and as athletes. And that's been part of the ethos of the University of Vermont from the time I was recruited there in the mid '80s and was a student athlete there up till today, and I think it always will be. And one of the challenging things that I think all of us who work in this enterprise deal with is the balance of living our core values and our core purpose and mission as departments, but also really wanting to win. Winning is important to all of us. I've yet to meet the person who works in this business who isn't competitive and doesn't want to win, and we're certainly no different. And our coaches and staff and student athletes hear me talk about that all the time, that winning matters. But winning is not an end unto itself. It's because it reinforces our values and our purpose and our mission, which is about developing young people. So it's challenging, I think, for all of us, the pursuit of excellence, the pursuit of competitive success, pursuit of winning, but also to do it in a way that's authentic to our institutions and to us as people and to professionals.
You used the word reinforcement, and you're going through the process now, Paul, Fairfield. Once you've defined what these guiding principles are for your team, how do you ensure your assistant director of marketing grasps that, is living that, is an example of that around his or her peers in front of student athletes? You're at one point of the hierarchical structure. How do you control everybody else's behavior? What checks and balances are there that are reasonable?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it comes to sort of it's our day-to-day actions, I think, to a large extent. It's one thing to have mission statements and values and different things that we've written down and worked on. But it's another thing to really live those on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's a responsibility that we all feel as leaders in this business, is to model those kinds of values for our staff and our coaches and people in the organization. And the other thing that can't be underestimated is hiring, is to make sure that there really is a good philosophical fit when you're making decisions about staff and coaches. And I think all of us in this business realize that there's probably nothing more important that we do than hire staff, and particularly coaches and those individuals that work most directly with student athletes.
when you're doing those hiring exercises, are you listening to specific words that match your own for the department? Are you, when you ask, what do you know about us, are you almost waiting for them to say, here's what I think of when I think of Vermont, or they've done some research? Is there a direct connotation between the candidate and who you are as an institution that you're really trying to pick up on?
You know, I don't think all of us are looking for that magic bullet as it relates to interviews. You know, what's the one question that you can ask that you're going to know that this person's going to be successful and fit into your organization?
Wire manhole covers round.
It's. I think it's bigger than that. You know, it's really getting a feel for a person and spending time with that individual. But I do think there are ways, you know, to understand why somebody's motivated to be in this business. You know, is it because of the energy and the excitement of games and winning and championships, and are they trying to relive a college experience that they maybe had, or are they really committed to helping young people grow and develop, you know, which is the reason competitive sport is part of higher education. And when we lose sight of that, that's, I think, when we get in trouble.
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. I think a lot of it is, on an everyday basis, is trying to model the behavior that you're espousing. And I think that goes a long way. I think one of the things that we're going through right now, and again, it's a little bit of a different situation because I'm coming into a new place and we're trying to build some things from the ground up. So I think one of the things that we're doing that is really important is getting buy-in and collaborative input on the front end, so that people who, if we're building our mission and our vision and our core values and our promise to future stags, everybody's having a bite at the apple in terms of giving their input. And we've done that in a number of ways, so that hopefully when we get to the end game, that I have 75 ambassadors who have bought into that. And so there's kind of this inherent belief, and hopefully that they're modeling that behavior and that belief every day. That doesn't mean you don't have to monitor it and kind of continue to kind of live it every day, but I think the buy-in on the front end goes a long way because it creates a sense of ownership. And I also think it's about hiring the right people, and I try and look for some general qualities that hopefully will translate and then automatically translate into what your values are. And I think the ones that you always think about are work ethic, positive energy, passion, and do they believe in, do they show that you want to be at your institution?
I'm curious of the imagery of these core values, and like at Vermont, are they, when you walk in the department, are they there? Are they on somebody's desk, everybody's desk? Is there a power in repetition, mental repetition almost, of being around them? How do you leverage branding and imagery, I guess, for that effect?
It's a good question, and I think different departments and different athletic directors approach it, have their own styles around that. For me, it's not about pasting it up on the wall and having people see it every day when they walk into our office. Although we do have some of that. To me, it's more about the values that we're living on a daily basis. And certainly, when I'm together with our whole staff, we talk about these values. When we have a head coaches meeting, we're talking about these and kind of who we are as an institution, and just making sure that there really is that kind of philosophical alignment through all levels of our department, and hopefully with the institution as well. So, it gets to, it's one of the important aspects of leadership, just in terms of being authentic to who you are. I'm not somebody who's going to stand up at a staff meeting and kind of rah-rah and say, value number one, this is what we're going to talk about today. Some people do that and it comes very naturally to them and they're great at it. It's not necessarily my style, but hopefully I'm living our values and our core mission on a daily basis, and that permeates throughout the organization. 25
years at the same school, have there been times when you have felt shifts within the DNA of the institution that necessitates recalibrating a bit?
I think our core values as an institution, particularly around competitive sport, intercollegiate athletics, have remained pretty consistent, and that is that we want to do things the right way. We think we can have competitive excellence, kind of reinforce those values, the learning outcomes that come through competitive sport, and do it the right way, and do it with integrity, with really strong academics. I mean, our student athletes have had GPAs higher than the general student body for years on end, and graduated at rates higher than the student body. So we think we can kind of do it well on both ends, competitive excellence, winning without compromising our values and integrity. So what has changed, of course, is the landscape of college athletics. You know, what Division I athletics was when I was a student athlete is very different than what it is today. And that's something that we all are managing and on a almost it feels like a daily basis.
Another variable that seems like it's constantly changing too is the attitudes, the communication styles of incoming student athletes compared to 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Does that dictate at all, or the communication of these core values, do you anticipate communicating those to student athletes differently because they're so text message savvy or social media savvy or whatever it may be? How do you get through to them with what these really mean?
I think there's value to that. I think it's a combination of things still. I mean, I try and have as much interaction and FaceTime as I can with them to just kind of have that kind of almost be through natural conversation, and so that they get to know who I am and they get to know what we're all about, and you're just kind of continually reinforcing that on an informal basis. We are actually doing this summer some kind of refurbishing of our facilities to do some more branding. I think there's value for us at this time just as a reinforcement, because we're doing it in a little bit of a different way. Our bedrock values, be it Jesuit, be it Fairfield, have not changed. They're terrific, they're excellent. Just trying to kind of create them and have them, our athletes see them through a new lens so that it's more translational to what they're all about. So I think we're kind of reintroducing it in a different way. So there is that visual aspect of it. We've also we've asked them what they think. One of the first things I did when I got there in September was I did a survey that said, you tell me what it means to be a Stag. And so that's been part of this process, to kind of incorporate their feedback so that far be it for me to say I know what it means to come into this institution and know what your experience is all about. You tell me what it's all about. So I think there's kind of a combination of things that roll into that.
How many alums do you each have working in your departments, whether coaching, administrative?
I don't know that I can tell you the exact number, but certainly on our senior leadership team, we have 3 of 7 that are alums. And certainly that helps as far as the alignment goes. And Vermont's a little bit of a different place, you know. Vermont as a state is unique. It has sort of unique values. We're the only Division I school in the state of Vermont, so we certainly take that part of our mission really seriously, to represent the state of Vermont and to kind of live some of the core values of Vermont. You know, it's not a flashy state. There's a strong work ethic, and environment's really important. So those are all things that are important to us as well. And so, you know, being a part of the department as a student athlete certainly has its benefits, but there's also challenges with that. It's something I think about all the time. Having been at Vermont for as long as I have been as a student athlete, I left for a little while, came back, been working in the department for 20 plus years, like you said, is to not get caught up in just this is the way we've always done things, and to be learning and challenging myself and challenging the organization.
So how are you challenging yourself?
I listen to your podcast. That's my.
That was not a plug.
No, you know, it's a good question. I certainly talk to colleagues at other institutions and try to get away from campus, participate in professional development, and also look outside of college athletics for inspiration, you know, whether it's the business world or professional sports sometimes, or international. I'm involved in some international sports events, and I find, you know, when you get away a little bit, you see the world in a slightly different manner, and hopefully it helps inspire you to create positive change in your own community.
Your process of going from Central Connecticut State to Fairfield, and looking through the lens of what we're talking about today and how you instilled it at Central Connecticut State, what did you maybe learn there that you're going to do different, or you've done different as we move through this process at Fairfield? Takeaways from Central Connecticut State that you've taken with you now?
Yeah, some of it was almost by necessity, because I took the jobs at different times. So when I took the Central job, first time AD, started in May, the natural flow of the calendar was on the downswing. So you had more time, more downtime, so to speak, if there is any, to do the kind of look, listen, and learn tour. I started the Fairfield job in the middle of September, so everything was going 100 miles an hour already. So you kind of have to be more cognizant of managing the day-to-day, as well as kind of taking this step back to try and assess and evaluate and do all those things. So by sheer volume and time, I had to make some adjustments with that. I tried to remind myself more so this time that it's a marathon, not a sprint, and that you have to kind of be more measured in terms of what's coming at you and how to prioritize that. So you kind of, second time through, I think you naturally see what the kind of the low-hanging fruit is, or what you can have immediate positive impact on. Some of it's really easy, but meaningful. What kind of you want to try and attack maybe through that first fiscal year, and then maybe what's kind of the next 2 to 3 years. So I think I had a better gauge on that.
Sure.
Rather than trying to tackle everything
Sure,
at once.
sure.
And I think that's really a trap you can fall into pretty quickly the first time through.
Let's end with this for both of you. I think it was Jack Welch I read one time where, he's coming back from his annual holiday vacation and who knows where, he's on his private jet, but he said he would always take, that flight back to the States to take a perspective on the past year and his own performance and where they missed, and really try to sit down and be honest with himself about where, GE was going. Is there a time in the year, maybe it's kind of now during the summer, where you all do this, whether it's competitively or along the core values front? I'm going to assume the answer is yes, but what I'm really thinking I'm asking is, how do you do it? What kind of mental or physical scorecard are you using? Are you just jotting down notes on where you need to improve? How are you getting those thoughts together? How does that process seem to play out for both of you?
I'm about to do it in the next 2 weeks, because we take for the last 15 years, we've done a 2-week family vacation on the coast of Maine. And my routine is I usually get up and go for a bike ride along the beach at about 5:30 in the morning. And so there's a lot of downtime, alone time in my own head. And so a lot of it kind of gets reprocessed and replayed during those times. And a lot of it's mental notes, not necessarily this, because I'm not very good at it yet, but you try and get away from some of this.
Sure.
But I think for me, it's a lot of reflective time there. And it's usually at a good time, because it's right at the end of the fiscal year, and you're kind of like that one gap. If July seems to be the only natural gap now these days, because June is so busy. So that's how I try and do it, and seems to work pretty well.
I'm like Jack Welch. I do it on my private jet when I'm coming home. Not many private jets in Vermont, but I certainly don't have one. But it's really important. It's probably something, frankly, that I don't do as well as I should, is to really kind of take stock of some of the big picture things, and not only professionally but personally as well, as sort of evaluating where you're at. And as Paul was saying, the calendar we seem to be getting squeezed on both ends. Like, the academic year hasn't extended, but sort of dealing with issues from the academic year seems to have extended further and further. And the start of the new academic year is almost on us, with, in our case, soccer athletes and field hockey and cross-country athletes arriving sometimes in late August. So it is challenging, but it's really important. And I'm fortunate. I have an amazing leadership team and a group of colleagues that we're sort of always, I feel like, assessing where we're at. So it's not that we sit down for one meeting and say, this is our meeting where we're going to benchmark and see where things stand. But there probably is some real value to do that in a more intentional way than maybe we do right now.
I think Jeff makes a great point too about it's easy to either think about or answer that question from the professional side, because we all get obsessive about, because we're all competitive and it's a competitive business, and how are we doing, what do we need to do to get better, and how can we advance this entity and this team, and how do we raise more resources, and how do we generate more revenue, all those kinds of things. And probably my greatest area for improvement right now is probably continue to be a better dad and a better husband, because I have 2 young kids. So that needs to be, has to be, like, probably occupy more of my reflective time than it does, or than the other part should.
Sure, that's a good point.
So I think that's certainly something that in this business we all try and wrestle with, all the time, just because it's a 24/7 deal.
Sure.
I think that's, I certainly take that part of my responsibility as a leader seriously as well in terms of modeling. It's not only modeling our core values as a department, but also modeling kind of a healthy work-life balance to the extent that you can have that. And it is a very challenging job for everybody in our organization, not just for the athletic director, and sometimes more for other people, who have to get to a game 2 hours before and stay 2 hours after. So to the extent that I can model sort of that work-life balance a little bit, and making sure that people are spending time with their families, that families are invited into our department, and that's an opening, welcoming kind of culture, that's really important.
Appreciate you guys being here.
It's great.
Enjoy
Thanks
the rest
for
of your
having us.
summers.
Thanks so
Appreciate it.
much.
Thank
Thanks.
you.